Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Our Golden 20s. You have Sadie and Teagan checking in for a whole new episode.
Hey, welcome.
Welcome, group. Please take a seat. Stay with us for a while.
Yeah.
I feel you said that very zen, Tag.
Thanks.
This is our 21st episode, which is crazy. 21st episode on the 22nd of June. So we're doing this. Today we are going to be talking a bit about dating and partners, boyfriends, soulmates is the number one thing we're going to kind of debate and talk about. Are soulmates real? Or do they exist, I guess? But before we get into that, we can kick off this episode with a Tuesday tip.
Woohoo! Did you want me to start with my tip?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
So my tip is basically a reminder that I've been trying to tell myself. So I thought I'd share with the world.
Okay.
And it is basically to remind yourself that your body has carried you through this pandemic. Because I see a lot of people posting about how unhappy they are with their bodies because they've gained some weight or they haven't been able to work out because gyms are closed. And so I thought it'd be good to just remind you that you are literally going through a worldwide pandemic. The last time this happened was a century ago. And the reason that you're through it is because your body is strong and protecting you. And I think that's kind of cool. So
yeah, I love that. And I think we get so caught up in the aesthetics of our bodies that we forget just how much our bodies do for us in the day in, day out that we don't even think about. And taking that time, like you said, just to give yourself a break, celebrate your wins, I think that's definitely important. And that resonates for me. A good reminder I should definitely tell myself as well. And I think mentally too, right? Like we got through this, guys. Like it's not done yet, but things are definitely looking better. So give yourself a huge like hug and pat on the back. This is happening. We're making it through.
Yeah, I remember I used to say like watch a zombie movie and think like, okay, as soon as that happens, I'm dead instantly because like there's no chance. But now here I am, you know, a year and a half later.
Living the zombie movie.
Yeah, and I'm, you know, feeling very lucky that I am healthy. I, you know, got my first dose. It's all coming together. And that's just because, you know, I'm strong. My body's strong. So, yeah, it's all good.
I love that so much. I think that actually kind of transitions well into my tip. And of course, I have to go on like story time ramble before I get to the actual tip. But just the past few weeks, I've been feeling extremely down. And I think it is just due to like ever going lockdown. Like obviously now in Toronto, restrictions have started to lift. Things are starting to look up. But that didn't happen until, you know, just recently. So this year's been really tough. And I've felt like I've been dealing with the pandemic really well. And then just the past few weeks, it's kind of hit me that you have been doing it well, but that doesn't mean it hasn't affected you and doesn't mean that, you know, you're the same person you were in February 2020 before all of this happened. Like you've gone through a lot and yeah, there probably are some things that have changed. And at first I was feeling really sad about that. I feel like I've lost ambition like at work and just like the whole like go-getter mentality that I feel like my friends and family know me for. I feel like I've lost that just obviously because there's nothing to go and get right now. And it's just, you know, been daunting. So it's like I can put energy into work, but at the same time, it drains my energy when we're working from home. Like it's just been a lot. We're all in the same boat. Obviously, another big part of like my identity was like traveling and just like exploring. And that was all kind of taken away. And there's just so many parts of things that I pride myself on or what I used to pride myself on that made me that I feel so disconnected from. And it's
Right.
just kind of been hitting me the past few months. And as we ease back into kind of like real life in quotes and come out on the other side of this pandemic, it's just hitting me that like there's some things that I might not get back that I used to have, you know? There might be things that take a while, like my social life and whatnot, like things that I have to build back up over a few months or a few years. But I'm trying to not let that make me sad. And I'm trying to use this and like change my mentality to be like, the other side of this pandemic, it's not going back to what it was before. Like that's not the mentality that's cheering me up. The mentality is that this is like a fresh new slate and it's full of new opportunities. So the tip here, there's the backstory, me and my feels. The tip is to let go of any expectations as we ease back into real life. And I saw this little graphic on Pinterest, and all it said, it was a green background and it just had bold white text on it, and it said, "A new era of me." And I read that like 2 days ago, right when I was like writing notes for this podcast episode. And I was like, that sums up literally how I've been feeling. And like the mindset I want to take on is I'm kind of grieving, like I said. And I know this sounds very dramatic. Like, I don't think it is this dramatic, but maybe for some people it is. But like grieving parts of who I was before the pandemic. And then also just like now viewing it as like, well, now this is my chance to be whatever I want to be, you know? And like, if I want to pick up habits that I had before, great. If I want to make new habits, even better. So that is it. Let go of your expectations. View this as a new era of me, and we got this.
Yeah, I feel like that will probably resonate with a lot of people because I've seen people online saying that basically their identity was their work. So if someone asked like, "Hey, what, like, who are you?" They'd say, "Oh, well, I'm so and so and my job is as a fashion designer or whatever." But then when everything else got taken away except for work, they discovered that that wasn't necessarily what was fueling them and giving them joy.
Yeah.
And that,
oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, it kind of, you need to like do the work, I think, to shift your perception on maybe I don't want to live to work. Maybe I'm working so that I can live, you know what I mean? But I think it's hard, and I think that a lot of people are going through that change. And it was kind of forced. Like, our whole lives were kind of taught, like, figure out what you want to go to school for so that you can get your dream job and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, okay, well, I got the dream job, and this isn't what is fueling me. So
Totally.
what now? And yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, and that like is me to a T, like literally me to a T. And as soon as the pandemic hit and I was removed from my routine, I was like, wow, there's so much more that fulfills me than I had realized, you know, because I always thought I thrive in hustle culture, you know, and I thrive like when I'm working, and I still think that's true, but I think that's exactly what you said is like that's only part of who I am. There's a lot more to me, a lot more to my identity and like my values than just work and like, you know, my daily grind kind of thing that revolves around work. So yeah, I love that. And it's funny too because obviously I've been thinking a lot about this, and I also put a lot of pressure on myself just because I am a strong person, and anytime I show a moment of weakness, I feel it's out of character for myself. And I don't think my friends or my family view it that way, but I always feel like they do. You know what I mean? Sorry, I tripped over my words a little. I always feel like they do. And that's like not something I want to like, I don't want people to think I'm weak, you know? And I always am like, I'm the strong friend. I need to be there for other people. But sometimes it's like, okay, well, girl, you also need to be there for yourself too. So I've done a lot of like journaling, and one of my journal prompts was basically just like kind of getting back in touch with who am I outside of work, you know? And it was exactly that tag. It was like, what do I value? What makes me me? Like, what is my personality like? Like, how can I describe myself besides just saying what I do for a living? And
Right.
I know that sounds so dumb, but it just was like a good exercise for me to do to remind myself, like, pandemic or not, this is who you are. And maybe the pandemic has taken away some of these things. Maybe it's changed my views on some of these things. And then just how do I want to move forward with that, knowing we're coming out on the other side of the pandemic. So yeah, I don't know, just some soul searching happening over here.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, like, regardless of a pandemic, you know, you're changing all the time. And I think this is maybe something we're going to
Totally.
talk about in the main part. But
Yeah.
so maybe the pandemic's just accelerating the changes that would have happened anyways, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, okay, leave it to me to just be like, okay, guys, let's just get everybody in the feels in the first 10 minutes of this episode. We're not even talking about what we want to talk about yet, but
It's all
we're all
good.
like in our feels, getting deep. Oh man. Okay. Well, all that being said, let's transition to talk about relationships. And I think actually relationships is a big part of what I didn't necessarily think or thought I valued prior to the pandemic. And I know that sounds dumb, but it was like I took for granted, I guess, just like being able to go for dinner with friends and like catch up with friends and
Right.
always having, because, I don't have roommates anymore. I don't have a boyfriend. My family lives like outside the city. It was kind of isolating for me and I wasn't like, like used to that. But all of this is to say I value relationships and that is what we're going to talk about the rest of this episode. So, Tag, I think let's just start by talking about soulmates. So, when we're talking about soulmates right now, we're talking about the idea that there's one person out there who you're destined to be with, and this person is your other half romantically. So, Tag, I think like let's just address the question first. Do you believe soulmates exist?
No. Yeah, no. I don't think that. I think that this concept, and it's maybe the same as love at first sight, is kind of perpetuated by people who are in relationships. Like, I feel like that's the kind of thing that like someone in a relationship would say to their single friend.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that is realistic whatsoever.
Yeah. I'm with you 100%. Even as a single person, I'm like, I don't believe in soulmates in this context. Like the idea that there's one person out there that I'm destined to be with and the fact that I'm still single is because I haven't met them yet. Like,
right. Yeah.
No, I don't believe that.
Yeah. Like, I'll say, like, the monogamy is not the issue. Because I believe that people can be monogamous. It's that there's some, like, greater power in the universe that has these two people that are, like you said, destined to be together. And when you meet this person, it'll be like, boom, a lightning bolt, love at first sight. And then you'll get together and instantly know that you're going to get married, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like this view also just implies that once you do find that person, that's it. Everything else just falls into place. It's easy. They're your soulmate. So it doesn't take, like, your relationship doesn't take work. And I think that is like a total myth. And I think that's why I'm like, I don't believe in soulmates. And as someone who's like so devoted to like self growth and like self development and stuff, I'm like, people are growing all the time, and I think because of that, relationships take a lot of work and like a lot of communication, and you want to make sure you're with somebody who's supporting your growth and you're supporting theirs, and you guys are growing together, not just because you guys are destined to be together. It's going to work out despite you growing and the other person not growing, or you guys like changing, I guess, like who you are individually, and then don't expect that to not impact your relationship.
Yeah, I feel like even me personally, like when I first met my husband, I was like, wow, I really like this guy. I feel like I could spend forever with him.
Yeah.
But then I feel like if we broke up, I wouldn't have been like shocked either. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not just like you meet the one person and it all works out. Like, it's you have to put in work and they have to put in work to build a relationship. And it's the same like with friendships. Like, you don't just meet one friend and then you're like, oh my God, this is my best friend for the rest of my life. We did it. Like, just like with relationships, you have to put in work and build the bond together and put in the effort. And so I feel like that's kind of what gets overlooked when soulmates are mentioned.
Totally. I love that. And I think like we have an episode on friendships in particular and outgrowing friendships in your 20s. And I think that is so true. Like that applies to romantic relationships as well. And I think that applies to romantic relationships as well. And I don't think though, for some reason, when it's friendships that you're outgrowing, you're able, like obviously it depends on the situation, but I think people can find closure a little bit easier than in romantic relationships. Like I think it's common after a breakup to be like, that was a waste of time, or like, I guess just like looking back on that time and like regretting it. But I do think that every relationship, like if it's long term or if it's just like a short little stint kind of thing, I think you're learning something from every relationship, and that's like helping you kind of grow into yourself. And I think it's all worthwhile. But that being said, I think you need those experiences, and if they're good or bad, like that's the whole point of life. It's not just going out there looking for one person in particular that you're going to spend every single day with. You know, it's like, what's the word or the saying I'm looking for? It's like, it's about the journey, not the destination.
Right. Yeah. I feel like also that this is something I've brought up before on the podcast, which maybe makes me sound not like a romantic, but I think there needs to be an element of logic in your decision to like go forward with a relationship. Like, do you and your partner have similar long-term goals? Do you have similar values? Do you have similar lifestyles? Just because you feel that like ping of attraction and you work well together in the situation you're in now doesn't mean that you're destined to be together forever. And that's when you need to have like these discussions with them. And this is like I was saying in a previous episode, your proposal should never be a surprise. You should know that that's the next step in your relationship. And so that I feel like goes out of the scope of soulmates, because we met and we just go so well together and we're, you know, he makes me laugh, but we have totally different long-term goals and different values, and we live completely different lifestyles. Like, you need to kind of think of those things logically.
Yeah.
Because that is kind of the foundation of what makes up your relationship, and that's what will break your relationship.
Totally. Yeah, I love that so much. And I think that's like such a big part of relationships is like, for me, it's my biggest pet peeve. I don't even know if pet peeve's the right word, but like it bothers me to no end when friends are in relationships and they're sacrificing something for the other person. And I understand, you know, relationships are definitely about compromise in some cases, you know, maybe in most cases, but you should never be sacrificing your values, like you said, Tag. And like you should never be sacrificing your identity and like things that make you you and your goals just because you think this person is your soulmate, you know, like that doesn't seem to be a fulfilling relationship to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like that also goes kind of hand in hand with like love at first sight. I do not think exists. Like, obviously there's kind of like the attraction, which to me reads as more like animalistic. But if you're like attracted to someone and then you meet them and they're like a crazy racist or something, You're like,
Yeah.
then you'd be like, no, love at true sight doesn't exist. It's like the people who it happened to work out for that I feel like perpetuate that myth.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I think it's even the same as like everybody dreams of having like a meet cute. Like
Mm-hmm.
mine is definitely like in the grocery store. Like, you know, when I'm hoping for my meet cute to happen, I'm going to the grocery store looking super cute just to get my groceries. And I think we like romanticize this idea and like we all want that to happen. But I think, Tag, to your point, say it happens, you don't need to put your pressure or put pressure on yourself that it has to work out from that, because you might
Right.
actually go out with them and all of a sudden you're like, okay, no, like on an
Yeah.
emotional level, we're not connecting, you know, like we're not
Mm-hmm.
jiving. So yeah.
Yeah, and this is why, like, probably the majority of people in relationships, they meet their significant other at school or at work,
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, like, because that is already showing that you share somewhat similar values and have a similar lifestyle, at least a little bit. And then that's kind of your foundation that you build off of. Where if you're just meeting a random person out in the world, it's like the chances that you are compatible, I feel like, goes even lower,
Yeah.
because then you don't have, you know, work connecting you or whatever. Because, you know, you meet this cute guy in the grocery store and he's like, oh yeah, I'm a billionaire, or the other way where it's like, oh yeah, I'm almost out of money, I'm gonna be homeless. Like, you could be somewhere in the middle, you could be on either
Yeah.
side. Like, there's just no way of knowing if these random people you meet are at all compatible with you on like actual levels that matter when building a solid relationship. And so,
Totally.
yeah.
I think that's like so bang on. And this is where I really struggle with online dating. Like, not online dating. That made me sound like I was like super old, but like dating apps. Because that's it, is like you're just judging people based off a profile, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to see somebody's values through their profile and their
Right.
goals, especially until you start talking to them and
Mm-hmm.
you're swiping based on kind of like your initial impression of them. But it isn't until you start talking to them that you know if you're actually compatible or not. And
Mm-hmm.
I've said this to a few friends, is like, I'm on dating apps, like not at all like recently, but I have them downloaded, but that is not really how I want to meet my person. I
Right.
want it to be, like you said, Tag, like in like at the yoga studio,
Right.
because we clearly both, you know, value yoga and like
Mm-hmm.
have something in common since we're in the same place at the same time doing the same thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think, yeah, that is a way more realistic expectation to have rather than just, yeah, love at first sight for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like with dating apps too, like, you're obviously projecting kind of your best self in your profile. And then even when you're chatting, you're projecting your best self in the chat. You're thinking really hard about, you know, giving the best crafted responses. And even on a first date, you're trying to present yourself in the best. And it's the same like outside of dating apps. I feel like that's every relationship. And then it's like the longer it goes on, the more you kind of find out the real person that you're sitting across from. And it's the same like when you move in with someone, maybe that's when you realize you're not
Yeah.
compatible at all. Like, so maybe you're soulmates on your first date because it works so perfect, but by the time, you know, you're moving in together or you're getting married or you're having kids, things are shifting.
Yeah.
And I think that's normal.
Yeah, totally. So I think number one piece of advice to listeners, I don't think this is like an advice episode, but just while we're on the topic, be like your most authentic self on dates,
Mm-hmm.
like as much as you can be. I know
Yeah.
it's scary to be vulnerable. I've like opened up about that in a past episode. It's very tough to be vulnerable, but
Mm-hmm.
just like be your authentic self as much as you can, because first of all, it'll make the other person feel comfortable to be their authentic self too, but it also just helps you kind of know sooner if you guys are actually compatible or not. And
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about like viewing failed relationships, maybe not failed relationships, but like breakups as like a waste of time and stuff. But it's like if you're just honest and like yourself from the get-go, like you're kind of mitigating wasting time. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely a good piece of advice. I just called my own advice good advice. Oh man, that's just how my brain is working today. All of this being said, though, I was reading this Women's Health magazine article in preparation for this episode, and they had part interview with this clinical psychologist from a hospital in New York. Her name is Sabrina Romanoff, and she had this really amazing quote that I love so much. It was, "Replace the idea of finding your soulmate with creating one through years of learning about them, navigating challenges, creating a family, and loving each other through all the happy and hard times." So I think that like perfectly sums up what we're talking about here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just based off, you see them, you have a great meet cute, you're destined to be together, it's gonna work out. It's the idea that you find somebody you're compatible with who shares the same values and goals as you, same lifestyle. You're able to, build this really deep bond with them and go through life with them, and then they become your soulmate.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because as far as, relationships go, there is a significant amount, I think, of compromise. And so, maybe when you first meet someone, you think this person could be my soulmate. And then you actually are, dating them and seeing them more and more. And there are deal breakers, I guess. And I feel like this is where you kind of have to come into it logically and as an adult and have a conversation with them and say, like, the way that you're acting or the way you're doing this is a deal breaker to me. How do you want to proceed? And then if you continue to do that basically your entire relationship with them, and you kind of build and grow and help each other be better people. Hopefully it's better people, not the opposite way, and then you're kind of creating your relationship together, and it's giving you a shared thing that you're working on. It's not just like two people magically click and happen to hang out together. Like, it's a project and you are working on it with your significant other the entire time you're together.
Yeah. I love that so much. I think that's a great way to look at it. So, kind of on that note, just switching away from the soulmates, but to compatibility, I think we've talked about, sharing a lot of the same values as your partner. And I definitely think that like equals a strong foundation. But I do think in some cases, opposites can attract as well. I think, like we're saying, the values and even like lifestyle to a certain extent should be somewhat mutual, or at least like you can work with the other person's values, like maybe they don't value work as much as you value work, but you guys just understand that about each other and can work with it. However, something like family, maybe if you value family but your partner doesn't, like that might be like equal bigger things down the line. Like right now in our 20s, maybe it just equals you want to spend the holidays with your family, but they want to book an all-exclusive trip to Cuba for the holidays and not even celebrate. Like, like those sorts of things. Or it could come down to like, do you want kids? Maybe they don't want kids, those sorts of things. So like big values, you probably want to make sure you're on the same like page and goals. But I think as far as like personality and interests go, I think opposites can attract. What do you think about that, Teag?
Yeah, I feel like obviously having shared interests is maybe the easiest way to build a relationship because it's giving you stuff to do together and things to talk about.
Yeah.
And so maybe swiping through dating apps, that's something that you should be kind of keeping an eye out for. Like you said, if you see someone on a dating app that's super into yoga, you're like, okay, well, that's already something that we connect on and something that we can talk about. But then outside of interests, I do think that opposites can attract in some ways, and different kind of lifestyles can sometimes complement each other. Like if you have someone who's super organized and someone who's disorganized, the organized person can, help that person, and it's their thing. They do the calendar and the other one just listens to what they're saying. But it's also like at a point where it can't be too extreme, or else Like, if someone's a huge disaster and the other person's super organized, like, that's probably not going to work out. I think all of this is kind of within reason. Or one person's messy and one person's clean. One person likes to do the cooking and one person doesn't. You know, those are the kind of things that can complement. But if it's like one person likes to do cocaine and the other person doesn't even drink, well, you're probably going to have problems. One person likes to save their entire paycheck and the other person likes to blow it right away. You're probably going to have, you know, issues there. And so I also think it maybe depends on how important these values are. Like, maybe having a messy home isn't that big of a deal for either party, but financials could be a huge issue. So
Totally.
It kind of depends. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think while you were talking, what came to mind for me was if you are with somebody or like starting a relationship with somebody who is different from you in a certain way, I think you just need to decide, like, is this going to be a deal breaker? I think you use that word tag, where it's like you can make it work, but you just can't, like, you have to accept that about them. You can't view your differences as something will work on changing, you know, like, or something that you're going to hold against that person for your entire relationship. Like me, I'm not good with my money. I would love to be with somebody who is good with money so I can learn from them and they can help me. But at the same time, if they shame me for every online purchase I like made, like that probably wouldn't work out. You know what I mean? Like, I hope they can just be like, she loves to shop, you know, like she's trying to like make improvements on money, whatever it is. But I think there is like some balance in that too.
Yeah. And at the same time, you probably don't want to be with someone who has $5 in their checking account because as soon as they get their paycheck, they're like paying off 3 credit cards they have. You know, like, I feel like everything's kind of within reason. And so maybe you want to date someone who's outgoing. You can still date someone who's not, but then maybe in certain situations they are outgoing, or maybe they're not. But it kind of depends on how valuable that is. Like, I always pictured myself with someone who was like down to like go on any adventure and go out and go to every party. But that's not really Tyrell, who I ended up marrying. But I do find he's more of a homebody. But when we go out, he's like the one who's talking to everyone, going like chatting. You know what I mean? So these values might still be there, just not how you expect them to be. So even though he's not like, let's go to a party every weekend, when he goes to a party, he's like out there making small talk, chatting to everyone.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard because you don't know these things unless you kind of like see them in action. Too. So maybe this might be another dating app advice, but it might be if something seems like you won't be compatible, maybe that's, you know, you will be if you actually kind of take a chance and investigate. Like, if you're like, I only want to date someone who says they love to cook because I hate cooking. Like, who knows? Maybe you meet someone who's like, yeah, I don't like to cook because I don't know how to do it, but I'd love to take a class. And then it ends out working out perfectly, you know? Like, you don't really know until you actually get to actually know the person that you're dating.
Yeah. I love that so much. Yeah. Okay. And then Tag, I have one more on the compatibility, one more thought that I don't know really where you stand.
Okay.
So we've talked about astrology a bit in past episodes and mention it, you know, here and there. Pretty much, I feel like anytime we can. We're not experts, but I was wondering what you think about zodiac compatibility. Do you think like that's a thing?
Not really. My way of using astrology is to reflect on like myself on the inside. So I don't think astrology will like predict your future. That kind of stuff. And in the same way where I don't think like just because you're a Gemini, you should date a Scorpio. I feel like that's maybe just another way to limit yourself. And I
Totally.
feel like your attraction is, like I said, kind of more like animalistic, nothing to do with the stars. And so I feel
Yeah.
like astrology is a good tool to be like, what's going on inside me? Why am I acting like this? And then it can be
Yeah.
like, this is your sign, blah, blah, blah. I just don't know if it's, like I said, I feel like that's almost getting into the territory of like predicting the future. And that's the part I don't like
Okay.
about it. But yeah, what
Okay.
about you?
Gotcha. So I don't think this surprises anybody that yes, I do believe in it. But I totally agree with you. And I think I believe in it to a certain extent. Like you, I use astrology as a tool to analyze myself and the
Mm-hmm.
things that are going on in my life and the way, or sorry, the why behind why I am the way that I am. And I think, though, kind of building on that is I feel like astrology can help you get a good sense of others as well.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, this isn't like analyzing their birth chart by any means, and like all the aspects to their sign and like who they are. But I do
Mm-hmm.
think astrology and just knowing somebody's zodiac sign can give you kind of like insights into their personality and, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe not personality, into some of their traits.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be true, it might not be true, like there's obviously some Scorpio traits I like resonate with more than others, and probably same for you, Tag.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're just reading about yourself, I think having the same expectation for others. But I do think just because I believe in astrology so much and I believe in like those traits that it says for each
Mm-hmm.
sign, that there will reading compatibilities, it's very much like you might feel tension in this part of your relationship, but that's
Right.
because, as a Scorpio, you're a lot more, like reserved and
Mm-hmm.
not open to vulnerability, which is 100% me, versus, I'm trying to date a Libra who wants to talk about everything or whatever it
Right.
is. So I think they're interesting,
Mm-hmm.
but similar to you, I use them more as like a reflecting tool rather than
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I just started dating this guy and I'm now going to Google our compatibility to see if we're going to get married and have kids.
Right. Yeah.
Like, no, that's not the role it plays for me.
Well, yeah, and like you said, maybe you're looking and it's, saying you will feel friction here, but maybe the friction's like really minor, or maybe it's a deal
Totally.
breaker, like it's
Yeah,
still, I feel like, relationship to relationship dependent.
exactly. And you have to like
Yeah.
feel it out for yourself in your
Yeah.
personal experience. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I feel like the moral of this whole episode is that there's no like simple, easy answer of if you meet
yeah,
someone, is this the one? Is it going to work out? Like you don't really know until you go through it, I think,
totally. Yeah,
which sucks.
100%.
But it'd be so much easier if it was like, as soon as you knew, then you knew. But
Yeah. Like it does suck, but kind of going back to what I said earlier, like we also need to like enjoy it because like that's
mm-hmm,
the whole point, like if we just all graduated high school, went to the school we were supposed to go to, got the job we were supposed to get, met the man we're supposed to marry or woman, whatever. We had 3 kids, we got the minivan, we got the golden retriever. This is our
mm-hmm,
life. Like that'd be so boring, and that would imply that we're all the same, where it's
mm-hmm,
like, let's enjoy the, yeah, getting to know someone stage, and like, let's
mm-hmm,
enjoy learning about ourselves when things go wrong or learning about other
mm-hmm.
people. I know that's like way easier said than done. And that is definitely not how I view life all the time. But it is like a good, like, way to think about things, or a good reminder
Mm-hmm.
if you can think about things that way.
Well, yeah, I think like all of the most successful people and all of the good characters that you love in movies and books, the thing that makes you like them is the trials and tribulations that they've gone through and the ups and downs. So you
Yeah,
have to expect that if you want to become this like interesting person who's smart and has grown a lot, you're going to be going through mistakes and learning from them. And
totally.
you know, if you didn't, you'd be the most boring person in the world, and probably no one would want to be your friend. Like,
Yeah.
you kind of have to go through the ups and downs, and that's what makes life exciting. It's what makes the highs so high if you come from the low of the lows.
Yeah. And I think it's what helps you realize your potential. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned this in a past episode, my obsession with greatness. And that's like what helps unlock your greatness is when you take a
Mm-hmm.
risk on somebody, when you take a risk on something outside your comfort zone and it ends up being amazing. I think that applies to relationships as well. And this is
Mm-hmm.
me giving myself a pep talk right now is sometimes you have to step outside your comfort zone, you know,
Yeah.
and you have to put it all out there if it's being vulnerable or if it's just finally going for that second date that you said you would go for, but you feel scared. Like you just have to do it because you don't know what's on the other side of it. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like we said, it might be a flop, you know, might not go anywhere, but there is still that chance that it will go somewhere and it'll,
Mm-hmm.
you know, teach you a lot and be a really great experience. So you just have to go for it.
Yeah, I feel like with anything, but specifically in relationships, there is like a risk with any decision you make. If you
Yeah.
decide, I don't want to date anyone because I'm over it, there's a risk that 10 years later, you're like, ugh, I wish I was dating people. If you're out there and you're dating a bunch of people and you get your heart broken, there's a risk that you're like, God, I wish I had just never gone on all those dates, you
Yeah.
know? But you don't know. And it's the same with if you decide, I'm going to stay with this person forever, there's a risk. Well, what if someone better comes along? Like,
Yeah.
you have no way to predict the future. You just kind of have to go with the flow, go with your gut, and do what you think is best for you. Because no matter what happens, things are going to go wrong, and no matter what happens, things are going to go right. And
Mm-hmm.
that's literally all life is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so before we wrap this up, I just wanted to also end on the note of reshaping maybe what a soulmate is. And I came across some quotes on Pinterest and, you know, articles that are saying like maybe the idea of soulmates being, you know, just one, I was going to say
Mm-hmm.
one and done. That sounds mean, but like a one person for you, like maybe that's an outdated idea of soulmates and maybe it's evolved, but the word soulmate is still relevant. And I saw this little graphic forever ago and it said soulmates aren't just lovers. And I was like, this resonates so much to me because I've never been in a super serious relationship. I've never
Mm-hmm.
been in love, like in a romantic way. But when I think about my past roommates, you know, I've
Mm-hmm.
never had friendships like I've had with my past roommates, you know, and these
Mm-hmm.
people are the people who see you at the end of a really bad day and the
Mm-hmm.
people you cry to, you know, hopefully if you have like a good relationship with your roommates. I know not everybody does, but in my case, like my roommates, I felt like were my
Mm-hmm.
soulmates and saw every side of me and didn't judge me and, you know, kind of became my family. And it was like,
Mm-hmm.
when you think about soulmates in that way, you know, just talking about a person you have this super strong bond with and people who just
Mm-hmm.
understand you and you're like, you get me like nobody else does. In that sense, I 100% believe in soulmates. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I don't have like a million of them and I don't
Mm-hmm.
think there are a million of them for each person, but like for like even my sister, like literally the person I tell everything to, you know, and those
Mm-hmm.
past roommates, like I would definitely call them my soulmates,
Mm-hmm.
100%. I was also thinking, here we go. This is the only Sex in the City reference in this episode. Is when Charlotte says to the girls at brunch, like, maybe we can be each other's soulmates. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yes, like I feel that to the core, you know.
Yeah.
They just have
Yeah.
this special bond. They become each other's family and just, yeah, they're soulmates.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like even if I was to say compare the two stories of me meeting my husband and our relationship and me meeting you and our relationship, and was like, guess which one is my soulmate? I guarantee everyone would guess you, because it's like, we met the first day of kindergarten and then we went our separate ways and we came back together. You know what I mean? And so I feel like that's why putting a label on that it's going to be love at first sight and I'm going to meet the one and I'm going to know and we're going to be soulmates. It's just added pressure. Like, just go through your life.
Yeah.
It'll probably work out. It's all good.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, is that all we got on the soulmate topic?
Yeah, I think so. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to this week's episode. We put out a new episode every single Tuesday, so make sure you follow us and are subscribed. Give us a rating if you like the show.
Yeah.
That's something we've never asked before, but if you're liking it, shoot us a rating. If you're not liking it, shoot us a text. Don't rate us badly.
Tell us how to improve. Yeah.
Yeah. Give us a DM. Don't make it public. So you can find us on social media at Our Golden 20s on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Spotify, all over the place. We also have a Patreon where you can subscribe and we put out extra content there. We drop the episodes early and it's the best way to show your support for the podcast. So thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next Tuesday.